U.S. military strikes. The U.S. carried out consecutive days of military strikes across southern and central Iran, ordered by President Donald Trump. U.S. Central Command CENTCOM described the attacks as self-defense and a proportional response to Iran allegedly downing an American AH-64 Apache attack helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. Peace deal dispute. The escalation comes amid a dispute over a potential peace deal. President Trump claimed that Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei had approved a preliminary settlement that could be signed in Europe as early as this weekend. Iran's denial. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei denied Trump's claim, stating that Iran's leadership has not approved any preliminary deal and accused Washington of disrupting the peace talks through its military pressure. Welcome to News Edition, the only channel that brings you the latest news updates on conflicts around the globe. Before we continue, kindly click the like button, follow, and share. Thank you. No final agreement on deal with US-Iran. Tehran has accused Washington of disrupting the peace talks. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei has denied US President Donald Trump's claim that the country's leadership has approved a preliminary peace deal. The remarks came after Trump said on Thursday that a settlement could be signed as early as this weekend, likely in Europe, and that Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei had approved the terms. The president said he had called off scheduled strikes on Iran after 2 consecutive days of bombardment, which marked the biggest escalation since a truce was announced in April. Speaking to Iranian media on Thursday, Baghaei described recent reports as speculation, adding that the relevant authorities must review every detail of the text. The text has almost been finalized in its major parts. The problem is that the contradictory positions of the United States have always caused turbulence and disruption in this process, Baghaei said. He stressed that Iran would not compromise on its red lines. Axios. Garcios Bonisteroid Axios. He stressed that Iran would not compromise on its red lines. Axios reported on Friday, citing diplomatic sources, that the Memorandum of Understanding MOU, discussed by negotiators, calls for an immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran without any tolls, and for some U.S. sanctions relief based on compliance by Tehran. Washington Wuxia will also lift its blockade of Iranian ports, which would allow shipping via the key waterway, which accounts for around 20% of global crude oil trade, to fully resume within 30 days, the sources said. It's unclear if the draft MOU addresses the issue of Iranian assets frozen by the West, the outlet added. According to the sources, Tehran would also pledge to never acquire a nuclear weapon and make other steps to alleviate U.S. concerns over its enriched uranium stockpile. The issue of the Iranian nuclear program would be addressed in detail at a later stage, they added. Iran has repeatedly insisted that its nuclear program is entirely peaceful and rejected Trump's demand that it hand over its enriched uranium. If the MOU ends up being signed, it will be called the Islamabad Agreement, due to mediation by Pakistan and Qatar, Axios claimed. On Thursday, Iran's Fars news agency reported that Tehran considers as legitimate targets all interests related to economic holdings managed by Elon Musk in the Middle East, including a regional Starlink ground station. Musk's satellite internet plays a key role in the U.S. military operation against Iran, being used to carry out strikes with high-tech ordnance and direct surveillance drones. The Iranian military previously warned other U.S. tech companies, including Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, and Google. This week's resumption of hostilities triggered another spike in global oil prices as the U.S. continues to grapple with high inflation and the war with Iran remains unpopular with the American public. Trump has repeatedly claimed in recent weeks that his team was close to reaching a deal with the Iranians, but no breakthrough materialized. Iran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, warned on Thursday that Washington's wrong strategies and impulsive decisions were creating an endless quagmire in the region. U.S. strikes targets across Iran. As it happened, CENTCOM described the new wave of attacks as self-defense against unwarranted aggression. The U.S. has carried out strikes in Iran for the second consecutive day as President Donald Trump seeks to pressure Tehran into accepting his peace terms. Explosions and impacts were reported across southern and central Iran hours after U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said U.S. Central Command CENTCOM will be busy tonight. Because President Trump said we will be hitting Iran hard, And we will be, Hegseth told reporters. The Pentagon chief said the strikes would target key facilities in Iran and added that Tehran has an opportunity to make a deal with Washington. The hostilities marked the biggest escalation since a truce was reached in April. Despite Trump's insistence that the sides were close to a deal, the negotiations had stalled for weeks, with both sides accusing each other of bad faith and ceasefire violations. Last week, Iran threatened to suspend the talks in response to Israel's continued airstrikes in Lebanon. Tehran's conditions for a peace agreement include the cessation of hostilities on all fronts, including Lebanon, where Israel has been waging a war against Hezbollah since early March. Israel and Iran exchanged strikes on Monday. On Wednesday, the U.S. launched strikes in Iran in response to what it described as the downing of an American AH-64 Apache attack helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran denied responsibility for the incident and responded with a missile barrage targeting U.S. bases in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has posted on his Truth Social platform, promising more strikes on Iran and reviving his threat to capture Tehran's key energy export hub on Hagg Island. The United States will be hitting Iran, whose Navy, Air Force, radar, anti-aircraft, and all other forms of defenses, together with most of its offensive capability, are gone very hard tonight. At some point in the not-too-distant future, we will be taking Hagg Island and other oil infrastructure points and assume total control of their oil and gas markets, much like we have with Venezuela, which is working out brilliantly for both Venezuela and the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. Gamal Abdel Nasser Jr., the grandson and namesake of the Egyptian president who nationalized the Suez Canal in 1956, has told RT that geography can become an effective tool for smaller countries in their struggle against global powers. He also suggested that Israel was the reason for the US and Iran being unable to agree peace and restore traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jin has said that Beijing strongly urges Washington and Tehran to immediately cease military operations, return to dialogue and negotiation, respond to the mediation efforts of relevant countries, and achieve a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire as soon as possible. Russia is concerned about a new spike in tensions in the Middle East. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said, urging the US and Iran to show restraint. We are still calling for a return to the negotiation process because another round of escalation is fraught with new additional negative consequences for the situation in the region and the international economy as a whole, Peskov said. Russia for years stood for bringing the Gulf states and Iran together for a regional security concept. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has told Bahraini Foreign Minister Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayani during their meeting in Moscow. 2 weeks ago, we updated this concept and sent it to all capitals. We hope it will ensure stability and safety, Lavrov stressed. The Bahraini authorities attach great significance to international efforts aimed at de-escalation and guaranteeing and respecting the sovereignty of the states, Al Zayani replied. The latest US strikes on Iran have rendered the 2-month ceasefire between Tehran and Washington practically meaningless, the Iranian Foreign Ministry has said in a statement. The responsibility for the extremely serious consequences of this criminal act lies with the leaders of the US, the statement read. The ministry insisted that it is a legal and moral obligation of the Gulf states to prevent the American terrorist army from using their bases to target Iran. Tehran is determined to neutralize the sources of aggression against it in line with its right to self-defense, it stressed. A 150-ton cargo barge carrying essential goods from Oman to Iran across the Strait of Hormuz has been attacked by the US, the governor of the Iranian Sirak province, Reza Shahidian, has said. It was struck by an enemy projectile 5 nautical miles off Qasab, Shahidian told Irib news agency. Indirect negotiations to reach a deal between the US and Iran are still on track despite the latest exchange of fire between the sides, CNN has reported, citing a diplomatic source. AFP reported later that an unnamed diplomat told it that the Qatari delegation departed from Tehran this morning following talks with Iranian officials that lasted into the early hours of this morning. The discussions were conducted in coordination with the US, according to the source. At least 3 people have been wounded in the province of Tehran by brutal US airstrikes overnight. The head of the local emergency services, Mohammed Ismail Tavakoli, has told Fars news agency. The province is located in the north and hosts the Iranian capital. According to the Iranian military, the latest American bombardment mainly focused on the southern part of the country, but areas around the capital were also hit. 3 Indian seafarers reported missing after a US strike on an oil tanker off the coast of Oman have been confirmed dead. New Delhi's shipping minister Sarbananda Sonowal has said, "Their bodies have been located and identified," he added. "This is a profound loss to our maritime community," the minister wrote in a post on X. The Palau-flagged vessel, the Setabelo, had 28 crew members aboard, including 24 Indian nationals, 2 Pakistanis, a Ukrainian and a Russian, when it was hit on Wednesday. US Central Command earlier confirmed carrying out a precision strike on the tanker, which it claimed was transporting Iranian oil in violation of the American blockade.